All right, we should be done.
All ready? Okay. You ready, Mike? Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the, let's see, what is it? It is October 21st, meeting of the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. Ms. Bruno, if you would please call the roll.
Rankin.
Yes.
Mr. Kanziger.
Yes.
Mrs. Rose. Yes. Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Here.
All right, if you would please all join me in standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Doherty? Yep, you need to. We're good.
In the Zoom,
Yep.
you don't want to mute it?
No, I'm pulling the audio away from this mic, so we're good.
Okay. All right, now is the portion of our meeting when we're going to go through board committee updates. If you have no update, just say no update. Otherwise, you can give an update of your most recent meeting and your upcoming meeting. So first we have Mr. O'Toole with the audit committee and board policy committee.
I have no report for either audit committee or policy committee this evening.
Next up, Ms. Garvey, we have the business advisory committee, capital planning committee, and board of finance and budget.
Okay, so I have some reports tonight, and you'll bear with me. For the Business Advisory Committee, on the 16th of October, the EFC of Northeast Ohio Business Advisory Council met via Zoom to hear presentations on the state of the economy in Northeast Ohio, as well as the impact on the manufacturing industry by the COVID pandemic. Takeaway messages included that the sectors hit the hardest by the pandemic recession in Cleveland were the ones that were experiencing the greatest growth: leisure and hospitality, professional services and education, and health services. Those industries that depend on person-to-person contact. Makes sense. COVID hit different parts of the economy differently, with more damage to rapidly growing sectors. National businesses were not hit as hard as local. A destruction of wealth will result in less capital to start new businesses and fewer customers with disposable money to spend. There's been a disruptive impact on social habits and the use of technology. Government policies, for example, balanced budgets, may result in an increase in local taxes. Going forward, there will be a less favorable environment for entrepreneurship in private establishments. Unemployment is still at 2 times the normal levels, despite a slight recovery from the first quarter. Graduating students will have a tougher time finding jobs and internships in the sectors that were hit hardest by this recession. For the Capital Planning Committee, we are in the process of scheduling a meeting that will be in mid-November, so I'll give an update on that. That will be held via Zoom. And the Board Finance and Budget Committee has a meeting scheduled next Wednesday, October 28th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And we will be reviewing and providing input on the draft update to the 5-year forecast. The meeting will be broadcasted to our YouTube channel for those who want to follow along. That concludes my report.
Good. And for Records Retention Committee, we have no report. That wraps up our committee reports. Next, we're going to actually move on to a special guest we have this evening, Dr. David Exner from the Buckeye Association of School Administrators.
Thank you, Mr. President and School Board. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be back here. A place that I worked and lived for many years and have great memories in regards to serving this district and being part of it. As was mentioned, I'm with the Buckeye Association of School Administrators. We are basically a superintendent association, support superintendents around the state. We have over 900 members. And about when I get to the award part of this presentation, if you think about it, there are over 700 of those members are superintendents. So you've got 600 plus with the public schools, and then on top of that, you have career superintendents and ESC superintendents. So it's kind of a big deal that Bass is being represented here and giving the award we are. We lobby for school districts. We work with superintendents, like I said, in legal matters and PD. But one fun thing we get to do is select the superintendent of the year and do that each year to a superintendent in Ohio that has just rise to the top and is one of the best ones in the state. And saying that, so our 2000-2001 superintendent of the year is your superintendent, Dr. Robert Hunt. So congratulations to all of you. And if I can take just a few minutes and tell you why, I think you'll even be more pleased. I need to, I did spend a lot of time here as assistant principal, superintendent, and forget what else. But what I would tell you is Bob Hunt, when I was superintendent for a while, was my high school principal. And the neat thing about this is I have nothing to do with this. Bob was selected from a panel of past superintendent winners. So superintendents that were tops in Ohio are sent the applications, they are evaluated, and then from those totals, Bob far and above was the #1 winner. The few things that I would tell you about Bob, and I would just want to mention, Becky Quinn was your curriculum director, nominated him initially. And so what happens is there's different categories that have to be filled in. And I'll mention just a few of those and a few things she put in, because I think about Bob when he was kind of growing up as a high school principal in administration. And what I tell you about him, he was always an unbelievable student. The guy would ask so many questions. He would want to be a part of anything we were doing, whether it was a group, a committee, negotiations, you name it. And he didn't even realize he was training for the superintendency. In that, with professional development, I would say that the best example I can give you, many people are part of something just to check a box and maybe put it on their resume, and that's kind of sad to say, but not with Bob. And the reason I say that is he did some really heavy lifting in regards to some of the things he's been a part of. So he's, for multiple first-year superintendents, he's been their mentor in our executive coaching program. So that's a year-long program that he's taking calls from a brand new superintendent that doesn't know what he or she is doing. He's helping them walk through and get through problems and issues and all of that. And he's giving back to the profession in other school districts. Two other examples I would give you is we have an academy, and then we also have an Ohio School Leadership Institute. They are year-long programs. You're staying overnight, you're away from the family, you're driving from northeastern Ohio down 2.5 hours to Columbus, and Bob's done both of them. And that in itself is to grow our superintendents, first when they're in their young years, but the academy is for those superintendents that you just want to stretch things a little bit. And Bob, again, was a big part of that. Bob's received numerous awards. I'm not going to mention them all, but I will tell you, you should be proud. He's probably one of the few that now is a superintendent of the year, but also in 2007 was the principal of the year. And that's something to, again, be proud of. Areas of communication, even in the application, there was a lot of things listed that he had done and your district has done. And Bob's one, he will not take the credit, so it's good. You got to sit there and take this right now. Because he always wants to, even the way that was all written, I'm sure Becky noted and knows very well how Bob is, but he does things from a team aspect. And I think that way it helps grow other administrators and also gives them the courage and the knowledge. But the only thing I had to do is look at a video that someone from up here sent me down in Columbus. And it was of Bob, and it was right when the pandemic hit. And I gotta tell you, our phone was ringing off the hook. People were struggling, even today. We're kind of working through it. There's no handbook to say, now in a pandemic, go to page 3 and follow these steps. You're making it up on the run. You're working with the board, your administrative team. You're trying to put together. It's a totally different job. But he had a video on there. Then I'm sure you all saw it, just to calm everybody down. He spoke to the community. He said, we got this. And I can't, quote his exact words, but I'm thinking, dang, was that good? Well, I can tell you that video has been an example that I've sent to a number of superintendents, or I did during that time, and said, hey, you got to do this, because everybody was all over it. So a forward thinking, it is obviously a good example of what you do. Community involvement. You can't be a superintendent of Chagrin Falls Schools without being involved, embedded in this community. That's a fact. And I know firsthand. So you can talk about Rotary and clubs and things you're in, which yes, Bob does, and he's very active. But when you look at and how proud you must be of the intermediate building, I had an opportunity to tour that. I wanted to come up early. I hadn't had a chance to see it. And I was a middle school principal in that building for a while. So it kind of comes back and spent a lot of times. Oh my goodness, job well done. I also know, going through construction projects when we built this school, that it's a totally entire additional job. So you're spending more time and nights, and it really pulls you away from the things that you really wanted to do, but it's kind of fun. And Bob, with his background in work ethics, he did that. You did a heck of a job in regards to putting that together. I was so impressed. I mean, it just pumped me up to see that. And to keep the history as you did, of the 1914 building and wrap that around it. I remember that subject came up when I was here, and it was a tough push with the community, and obviously it wasn't done. So to get that done and work with the people of this community, congrats. There's a levy going on right now, and board, last thing you want to do is, you can't tell people to vote. Yes, vote, how to vote. But I'll tell you this, and I guess the best example I could give in regards to that work and how hard it is when I think about, the nights away, the weekends, the coffees, because everything is ratcheted up. So among everything else, you've got that on. I wish you the best of luck. I would say, I think back to an example of a student when I had to call it was actually Princeton, because one of our students wanted to get in, was kind of borderline. And I remember the Bly family. I forget if it was Alex or Donald, but I think Donald ended up going. But anyway, I was talking to the advisor, and she stopped me and she said, Chagrin Falls, the public school that thinks it's private. Well, it's one thing when you've been to, I worked in Chagrin and Sandusky, but now I can compare Chagrin with 900 other places, other leaders, 600 plus different school districts. And it is kind of like a private education, what you do here. So again, to keep that rolling going, and it takes a strong leader. He's been able to do that and just get better. So really appreciate, as again, a past employee, but you should be really proud of those things I mentioned. As I close here, I would tell you, the superintendent of the year means you just kind of did it all. And you outran everybody else, and you worked harder, and people are appreciating that, and they see it. But I will tell you, and as Bob knows, it's not just the superintendent who gets this award. It's Shannon, it's the kids, because a lot of times Daddy ain't home, okay? And a lot of times you might see them on Sunday and not again until Friday, at least with their eyes open. And that's a fact. I live in and know you're living that now. And you're doing that for this community, you're doing this for this district and the students, and you should be really proud of that. In the nomination, it was pretty clear that, many of the comments were about courageous leadership, decisions about kids first and so forth, and that's what you've done. So, Bob, if you'd come up a second, I want to congratulate you Normally, Bob would be up receiving this in front of 400 superintendents at the Hilton down in Columbus, but instead it's just us. Dr. Robert Hunt, Ohio Superintendent of the Year of 2021. Congratulations.
So before I let you get back on the road for that 2.5-hour drive, just a couple of quick comments. So I have a lot to thank Dr. Exner for. First and foremost, he hired me 18 years ago to come to this great district and supported me along the way, giving me plenty of opportunities to excel. And you know, he had a great career, 17 years I think in the district, and then went on down to Dublin to do great things. And he's always just served as kind of a mentor, that person who can pick up the phone and call and at least get another perspective, not one that would make the decision for you, but just give you something to think about. And I appreciate your mentorship, your friendship, and all you've done for me. So this comes full circle, and to have you here makes this even more special. So thank you so much. And you're right, I do have a little bit of trouble with the credit here, because every initiative, everything we talk about, is really the work done by our administrative team and our teaching staff. They are so incredible. They're willing to take risks, to take chances, and be innovative. And that takes, it takes a sense of courage to perform that way. And that's who we are as a school district, just committed to continuous improvement and always looking to better ourselves. And the staff needs to be commended and take a huge part of this recognition, as well as boards of education along the way. You're no exception to that. It takes a tremendous amount of support. I often wonder about the sanity of anyone who steps forward to be a board member, because you put yourself out in front of the community in representing and supporting the work that we try to do. And without a supportive board, without people that will push you to try to make you better, that will be honest with you, you can't get to the places that we have gone as a school district. And I thank you for that continuous support as well. It also takes a community that steps up and appreciates public education. And our community always shows up when they need to. They have a high expectation, there's a high level of accountability, which they should, and they support their public schools because they know of the value that they bring, from a property standpoint and as a community standpoint, as this being the central hub. So I want to recognize the community. And I would get myself in a lot of trouble if I didn't thank and recognize my dear wife who's sitting over there. It takes a lot of time away to do this job right, and to have someone who understands that commitment, supports it, and is always there to lean on is very much appreciated. I love you very much, so thank you very much. Dr. Asher, thank you for being here and making the drive. I really appreciate it, and thanks for this opportunity to continue what we can do at Chagrin Falls.
Fantastic. Well, so Dr. Axner, thank you very much for coming in this evening. I appreciate that. The whole board of the community appreciate you taking the time to come and present Bob with this award. And obviously, congratulations, Dr. on the award. It's a stupendous award, especially given this year. As you said, I'm sure I know you fully earned, every ounce of that award this year. you feel every ounce of it. So congratulations. Thank you, Dr. Axner. Congratulations, Dr. Beach, too.
It's good to see everybody.
Thank you very much.
We tried to clap with one.
I don't know.
We should have had your kids here.
Every bit of technology is a different part.
Great. Well, still on the block. So next up, Dr. Hunt, your report.
Thank you. We get to continue the recognition of students. I know we started that at our last meeting and want to continue it at this meeting. Unfortunately, obviously, we did not bring everyone in tonight, but we sent them notice that they would be recognized. And again, joining us is Director of Curriculum, Becky Quinn, to walk us through that recognition. So I'm going to turn it over to you this time, Becky.
Are you able to see my screen okay?
Not yet, Becky, we're just seeing you.
Can you see it now?
Not yet.
Okay. Back to the meeting. Now?
Yep, you're good.
Great. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to recognize yet another group of outstanding students this evening. Tonight, we're recognizing students who have truly pushed themselves to maximize their potential. Students and their families have been invited to tune in to tonight's board meeting, and each student has received a certificate and district swag to celebrate his or her accomplishments. First, we would like to recognize students who have maximized their potential as evidenced through success in writing contests. Just to give you a little bit of background, students enrolled in the Advanced Gifted ELA clusters in grades 2 through 6 or Advanced English in grade 7 or 8 are provided with ongoing access to writing contests and competitions, and they're encouraged to select at least one of these per school year. The purpose of this experience is to extend learning for students, provide enrichment beyond the classroom, challenge students, expose them to the guidelines, timelines, and requirements specific to individual contests, and to engage them in writing, which extends beyond the scope of the typical classroom experience. What started as a 5th grade writing contest requirement in Mandy Marlowe's 5th grade ELA class in the 2019-20 school year turned into extensive research using primary sources to develop a comprehensive project for Natalie Vinorski. She created a documentary video project entitled Fight for Your Rights, featuring unsung hero Claudette Colvin, who's actually pictured on this slide. She served as a role model and inspired others to create change. Natalie has received a $200 stipend from the Lowell Milken Center for Unsung Heroes. Congratulations, Natalie. The Scholastic Scope Magazine Superhero Contest encouraged students to write a story about what it would be like if they were a superhero, focusing upon their internal and external conflicts. We'd like to recognize current 6th grader Lainey Holmes, as she was a winner of this contest in 2020 as a 5th grader in Mrs. Marlowe's ELA class. Congratulations, Lainey. The Inklings book contest is designed for young writers in grades 3 through 9 who are ready to be treated like a professional author and increase their writing skills. Finalists receive a revision letter and are provided with the opportunity to revise prior to publication on the Inklings website, simulating the process endured by famous award-winning authors. We'd like to recognize current 6th grader Claire Rubin, as she was a 2020 Inklings book contest finalist for her story entitled A Door Between Two Worlds. Congratulations, Claire. The 2020 NPR Student Podcast Challenge required students to create and record an original podcast with the help of a teacher and submit it to NPR. As 6th graders in Mrs. Owens' ELA class in 2019-20, the students featured on this slide submitted an entry and won an honorable mention for their work. While the current 7th grade students on this slide, featured on this slide tonight, were featured in the August 2020 Super News, we wanted to take the time to recognize them at a board meeting for their outstanding achievement and willingness to really stretch themselves in new and exciting ways. Congratulations. Next, we'd like to recognize students who have maximized their potential as evidenced through success in different math contests. To give you a little bit of background, students enrolled in advanced math programming in grades 2 through 12 are provided with ongoing access to math contests and competitions and are encouraged to participate in at least one event per school year. The purpose of this expectation is to provide enriching experiences, encourage students to stretch themselves, expose students to the experience of competing in an academic setting, and encountering questions which may extend far beyond the scope of learning within a classroom setting. These contests have included the Noetic Math Learning Contest, the AMC 8, the AMC 10, the AMC 12, and the Modeling the Future Challenge. In spring 2020, second, third, and fourth grade students participated in the Noetic Learning Math Contest. The goal of the competition is to encourage students' interest in math, to develop their problem-solving skills, and to inspire them to excel in math. During the contest, students are given 45 minutes to solve 20 problems. Many problems are designed to challenge students and to enrich their problem-solving experiences. The students featured on this slide won individual outstanding awards in the 2020 Noetic Learning Math Contest for their outstanding achievement. Congratulations to all of these students. We would like to also recognize the second grade team from Gurney Elementary School in 2019-20, who was awarded the Noetic Learning Math Contest Team Achievement Award, scoring in the top 10% of students across the country. We applaud the performance of these students as well as their efforts to truly push themselves. We thank our families for supporting our students in these endeavors. Celebrating student success is always a pleasure, but we also believe that recognizing the ongoing efforts and perseverance of our students to continue trying is just as important. Together, we're really promoting a culture in which students feel safe to seek out new challenges and continue to grow as learners. Congratulations, students.
Congratulations to students, and I want to thank our staff members. Often these types of activities are things above and beyond the classroom. They've got to work outside of the school day to provide these opportunities for students, as well as parents at home for shuffling kids back and forth to participate. So great work and great achievement. And we will give you as loud as a 6-person clap can give you virtually. Okay. Next up tonight is Director of Pupil Services, Jennifer Banco. I asked Jen to give the Board of Education a brief update on social emotional learning in our schools. Obviously, when we went fully remote in March of last year, the social emotional component was a significant concern for us, and this has been an ongoing focus area over the last couple of years and will continue this year as well. So I thought it would be important to have Jen give you an update on where things are. And I think next month when you see our goals, one of the things is the continuation of this work, which Jen will focus in. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jen Banco.
We can see it, Jen, you're muted though.
Okay, is that better?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time to listen to our update on what's going on in the schools from a social emotional learning perspective. I wanted to start by just kind of giving you a brief overview of some of the work that we did last year. Even with the school closure in the spring, we were still able to make great strides in what we were able to offer students in terms of tiered supports within our behavioral system or PBIS framework. On our tier 1 or universal level, we, for the first time, collected baseline data on student social emotional learning competencies. We had a very successful parent community engagement opportunity whereby we did a book study featuring Dr. Lisa D'Amour's book Under Pressure, which was really about raising girls who are confident and can manage the stressors of everyday life. And then we also had our district PBIS teams meet and continue the work of rolling out a general PBIS framework in each school. At a tier 3 level, we welcomed in a district wellness coach in Jessica Fosna. She's a licensed clinical counselor who is providing mental health services at Gurney, the intermediate school, and the middle school. And we saw the creation of the Chagrin Care Team, which looks to provide wraparound supports for families in our district. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Looking ahead to this year, we continue to work primarily in our tier 1 and tier 3 areas. We are again going to collect those same data points for social emotional learning competencies. This will be a very interesting, I think, activity or process because we're going to be able to look at student data to compare how students are rating themselves on competencies such as grit, growth mindset, perseverance, self-awareness, and it'll be interesting to compare their perspective now relative to a year ago. We're going to pilot a social emotional learning curriculum, and then we're going to look to continue our parent and community outreach programming, as well as involve some professional development for our staff on mental wellness and mental health issues. And then at the tier 3 level, we'll work to expand our Chagrin Care Team. I want to take a moment and talk about the Chagrin Care Team because it really is kind of an innovative concept and definitely new to our community. The Chagrin Care Team is comprised of professionals throughout our district as well as resources within our community, including our school resource officer and a family support specialist. The purpose of the Chagrin Care Team is really to look to help to provide supports for families who are struggling, either experience some type of financial hardship or having difficulty meeting the basic needs of our students. We feel this is an important goal for the team because we know that when students are struggling in those areas, it impacts their educational performance. So the Chagrin Care Team meets once a month as a group, and currently our referrals come from within the buildings. Our principals or counselors will refer a family to the Chagrin Care Team, and we will discuss ways that we can bring in supports for that family. So as an example, we have connected families with resources to provide food. We have connected families with resources to help come up with a transportation plan for a young child to get to school. And we've connected families with other social service agencies within the district. We've looked to provide students with extracurricular activity access that they haven't had previously, and those other types of supports that wrap around and bring school and family closer together. At the district level, the Chagrin Care Team worked in cooperation with the PTO to establish mini food pantries at each building last year. They actually will be in place here within a couple of weeks, with the purpose of those food pantries being to meet the needs of our students who are coming to school hungry. While we're fortunate that we don't have a lot of kids that fall into that category, we do have diversity within our community in terms of socioeconomic status, which does impact the ability of some of our families to provide food for their children on a regular basis. This year, with it being our second year, we're looking to kind of get the word out a little bit more to the community, and we're going to be allowing families to make a referral on their own behalf to our school counselors or principals. We feel that there's a lot of value in what the Chagrin Care Team can do, and we just want to make sure that people are aware of that resource. The second big initiative that we're going to look at this year is a social emotional learning curriculum. Social emotional learning is a hot topic right now, but it has been for quite some time now and will continue to be as we move into the future. Last year, Governor DeWine authorized funding for all schools to be dedicated toward intervention and prevention initiatives. One of the things that falls under that category is social emotional learning. So with the With that funding available, we are going to be looking to bring in a program called Second Step, which I will share with you briefly tonight. It is a research-based social emotional curriculum that aligns with our state SEL standards, as well as the standards for social emotional learning that have been identified by CASEL, which is one of the leading national organizations that promote social emotional learning. The Second Step program also partners with a screening tool called the DESA, which we will also begin to look at to use with students in order to identify those students who may need more and more intensive levels of social emotional support. Just a little graphic that kind of looks at the different areas that Second Step addresses. And it was really interesting because after having participated last night in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice task force, I really saw a lot of the tie-ins between our social emotional learning curriculum, those objectives, and the topics that that task force discussed last night. So I think we're really at the right place and right time right now to be bringing in some real clear instruction for students in terms of social emotional learning. I put just a couple of quick videos at the end here if anyone's interested in learning anything more about Second Step, or of course I can answer any questions as well. So we're looking forward to this year. We're hoping we get a whole year with students in our building so that we can go ahead and provide those services that students need, and we can meet those social emotional needs as well. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, thank you for your time, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions at any time.
Thank you, Jen, I appreciate it. I'm gonna need you to unshare your screen. Not a dramatic pause.
Sorry.
I have a stack of books in my office for mine.
Mike, we okay? Coming through. Mary Kay, can you hear me okay?
For those of you that can't see or follow along, I would say Walmart.
Okay, so we're trying something a little bit different tonight to make sure sound comes through. So hopefully this is working out okay. I want to give the Board of Education kind of a district update as we've talked about each meeting regarding COVID-19, state of schools, and kind of maybe some next steps in terms of our direction. I want to, first of all, commend our staff and our students for everything they've been through over the last, couple of months. Well, you can go all the way back to March of last year. It's been a tremendous amount of change and certainly the impacts of that much change can be, very overwhelming for young people. So we appreciate their continuous effort. Also want to recognize our staff from people that are, responsible for setting up our classrooms, bringing PPE and getting ready for the opening of school, to our teachers that are teaching in a completely new environment and kind of figuring it out as they go. Whether you're in virtual academy or whether you're in the hybrid model currently, I hope everyone recognizes the commitment of our staff. So let's start with our dashboard and talk through that just a little bit. First of all, I had an update with our staff this afternoon around 4 o'clock. And I paused here and said, we got a lot to celebrate. If you look at our numbers, if you look at spread, both in our school and in our community, if you look at the data points that we said we were going to monitor when we open schools, we have done a very, very, very good job. And that's a result of the work that we talked about, the work of individuals putting the right health and safety things in place, our diligence in wearing masks and distancing and temperature checking on the way in. And we've had some close calls where parents, symptoms were identified or in someone was at home and a parent made the right decision to just keep people home. That kind of behavior, and this is where I will start and this is where I'll end. That kind of behavior is what leads to where we're at in this dashboard. And it's kind of like we control our destiny, and that continues to be the case. We have done a very good job, and we have seen very low incidence in terms of cases of COVID-19 in our school district, and everyone can be commended on that. The biggest change in the dashboard from the last time I think the Board of Education saw it publicly, I'm sure you go online and look at it, is the health advisory system from Cuyahoga County. If you listen to Governor DeWine's press conference or watch whatever news channel you watch, there is a growing number of cases in the state of Ohio. Cuyahoga County went red and Geauga County went orange last week. And I would imagine those numbers will creep in the next couple of weeks. The thing about the advisory system, Cuyahoga County will take longer to shift just due to pure numbers and of people that are in Cuyahoga County. And Geauga County, you might see a quicker bounce back and forth between numbers as we go through this. So state advisory system is the only item that has changed. You see Cuyahoga County along the top there. When we opened school, just to remember this dashboard wasn't rolled out at the opening of school. When we opened school, Cuyahoga County was in red. I believe Geauga was in orange at that time. Geauga dropped to yellow, and you can kind of see the trajectory and trend with the state advisory system. We continue to be very pleased with our community data, looking at zip code data and looking at cases from Geauga County, as well as active cases in our school district. I think all indications from a data perspective and the things that we said we measure, we're moving in a very positive direction getting through this pandemic. This is the data that we look at regularly, and really we communicated with our community that we would monitor and help drive decisions on a change in model. But there are some other things that we have come up along the way. We'll talk about social distancing in a little bit. That's something that we have started to consider and look at number of students in quarantine. And then also every week, I'm on a call on Tuesday with the Lake County and Geauga County Board of Health directors, getting updates on what they're seeing. I'm on every Friday with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health director as well, getting input. In fact, last Friday, the call with Cuyahoga County was very enlightening, and the message that came from both counties really was this idea of, yes, there's a current increase in trend, but incidents that are occurring are mainly through community spread. So things that are happening outside of schools and spread at gatherings. Schools and classroom exposures continue to account for a small portion of any of the cases. And I pushed pretty hard on the Cuyahoga County health director. I don't know a superintendent in all of those loops that I have on the phone call, a superintendent that has reported back that they have seen student to student transfer, student to teacher transfer, or teacher to student transfer. And I think largely in part due to the protocols we have in place. And also, we also have to acknowledge there's asymptomatic things out there that we just don't know about. But when pushed, they would not, commit that there isn't a case. Their comments were, it's very hard to point down and nail down exactly where somebody got one. So I think in returning to school, all the protocols that have been in place have really helped. What we were fearing when we all walked in August was, are we creating a super spreader in terms of this gathering? And I think the protocols effectively implemented, consistently implemented, and have led and played out to keep very low numbers in school districts. And I've included some of those here. I know the board has seen a larger list that we track and we communicate. I essentially thought, okay, who's right around us here and looking at cases. Orange would be a little bit deceptive as they have not returned. They've been in remote learning. I believe they're considering a return next Monday. Beechwood and Solon are in a model where they have K5 coming full day, and they have their K5 full day and 612 in a hybrid situation. And then you can kind of track through this. I know there has been numbers that have moved. So I just want to point out this data was pulled off the state website on October 15th. So some of these may have moved a number, but I'm trying to make the case that in terms of active cases, we're not seeing the real challenge. Where districts that are either all in are seeing a challenge, and we've experienced this somewhat, is the issue of potential quarantining with an active case. So to remind you, I think we talked about this last meeting, if you're within 6 feet of another student for 10 cumulative minutes, not consecutive minutes, you are responsible to quarantine for 14 days. And there have been districts, and when I broaden the scope of conversation, to the state level, there's districts in Cincinnati where they have hundreds and hundreds of kids in quarantine. So there has been conversation with the governor's office. We've been engaged in those conversations around the American pediatric recommendation of 3 feet. And do we see a shift in that? I think the response from the governor's office is they're committed to kind of looking at this data, looking at schools that are all in, that are more in that model, and taking that under consideration. But I don't count on a shift in the recommendation anytime soon. So those are all things we look at, consider, and work through. And I think it is time, based on the data and what we know, for us to work towards and lean into trying to bring our students back to school. And so my recommendation tonight is going to be that we return students K6 to a full day of school, an everyday model at the conclusion of the trimester. So there's natural breaks, obviously, in the school year. It makes a lot of sense to try to leverage one of those natural breaks when you bring in students back. When we do this, there will be some teacher changes. So again, doing it at a natural break makes sense. There are pros and cons, and I'm trying to be as transparent as possible to every decision we make in this. Some of the pros, this provides 3 more weeks for us to monitor data. So although the recommendation is tonight, we look at these things almost daily, and we certainly, as an administrative team, sit down and look at it together on Mondays. So we have 3 more weeks to monitor data and see how it's going to move. And that could impact this decision. It may be I come in a week or 2 weeks to you and say, listen, what we're seeing now is the spread isn't outside of us, it is within us, and we need to press pause and stay in hybrid. So that is a reality that may happen, and we need to communicate with our parents, because I know there's childcare issues and things of that nature that are out there. So if there is a significant shift that we believe it's starting to, and we're seeing a trend up in our cases even locally in our schools, we could press pause and stay in hybrid until January. It retains the current safety protocols, including mask temperature check, assigned seating, limiting transition. We'll increase, we've actually found a different brand of desk dividers that provide more clear view for our students. We'd increase the implementation of those across the district and provide appropriate time for facility modification and over the next 3 weeks. So we've already been ordering in furniture, putting furniture together, getting it into classrooms, spreading that out as much as possible. I think anyone who's toured the intermediate school realizes we have a lot of square footage there. I really think we can really maximize that square footage, especially with those common areas to push students out to, and address and really honor as much social distance as possible, probably pushing us between that 4 and 6 feet, and definitely towards the higher level at the intermediate school. That becomes way more challenging at Gurney, and just full transparency. We'll shoot for anything above 3 feet in that environment. Split lunches in both buildings, where you'll have a lunchroom like Gurney. You'll have students in the cafeteria. We'll also set up the gymnasium, spread students out, put barriers up in the lunchroom as well. Some of the other pros: full curriculum implementation in all subject areas, increased instructional time in math and reading for not only our in-person learners, but our virtual academy learners as well. And then we were able to shift some of our staff that's currently helping on the virtual side that normally are intervention services, what we call tier B, 2B services. We'll be able to pick some of those up. And that was one of the sacrifices of our hybrid model. And then there's an encore. Cons, I talked about the limits of social distancing. Some transportation routes will have to allow 2 per seat with priority given to families when transporting. I mentioned that there are very little to no numbers in elementary schools from the data that I have gathered from our local, other local schools. But if there were to be a case, that quarantine issue will come up, just in full disclosure. And then arrival and dismissal, we put something out. We had about, I think the number Mike told me was, I don't remember if it was 75 or 100 that transitioned and said they would use transportation in this environment. If you've been to Gurney Elementary at 8:30 in the morning, we're getting a lot of patience and grace from South Russell PD in terms of being out on Bell Road. So we really need those that are comfortable in that environment to go ahead and utilize that transportation in that environment. So I'm going to pause with the elementary recommendation just to see if the Board of Education has any questions before I move on specific to an elementary full day return.
And parents, I know that we surveyed and advantage of the virtual model.
If somebody wants to do that, I would need to know by like Friday. They're starting to, and we've got virtual students that want to come in like now. But the reality of that is we could put you in a class at Gurney, but you may change teachers twice in a matter of 3 weeks. And I just don't think that's good for our kids. When we redo all of these class lists and we make this move, I want to be pretty firm. I did say we'll evaluate it at second trimester. If there's an ability to bring kids in that want to come in, we'll certainly do that. But it becomes very difficult when you staff for the virtual students because they deserve our teachers, our attention as well. And then you have if we had a large group come out of that, then you maybe have 5 or 6 kids, 2 or 3 kids in a grade level. We don't want to force so many instructional teacher changes.
I think
Yeah.
parents were very thoughtful from conversations that were happening even with me about when they were asked to commit what they were going to do going forward. So I would be surprised if there were any changes, but someone might have had an elderly person move in with them or the situation. Sure. So is the building principal the right person?
Yeah, I would reach out. I will put a letter out probably tomorrow. Okay. I'll let them know, contact building principal immediately. Numbers, we gain students, if you look at the, net on students, if we transition everybody who wanted back in the district, we'll have more people coming in person in the models.
Bob, you mentioned the intermediate school has a little more space. Can you give us a sense of, for the vast majority of kids at intermediate, will they be distanced 6 feet or is it a little bit less than that?
Yeah, 6 feet is much more attainable at the intermediate school. And, the principals are going to start having conversations with teachers. So we actually did site visits as well. We went to some of the schools that were all in just to see the things they were doing. For example, at Kenston, if they have a class over, I don't remember what the number, let's just use 25. If a class was over 25, they actually rotate 4 kids out on a given basis. So I'll use my son as an example. He would go to the cafeteria, tune in and be a remote student 1 day a week to keep the numbers down. So those are the things now that we will look at with staff and say, okay, you're at 25, 26. That's really even close to 3. Can we use this pooling system? The reality of that with young kids is just much more challenging. Now we have decent square footage in a lot of those rooms down there. Encore is going to push into classrooms for the most part. So we've got some additional space we can leverage. And really that's the work that's going to happen between now and trimester to balance and push kids out as far as we can.
And what about at learning?
Same thing. Encore will go into classrooms. That will free up some classrooms to help spread out, but it's definitely less at Gurney. Yeah, we just don't have those large common spaces to leverage.
So it could be 3 feet.
It very well could
for
be.
our learning plans.
It could be.
And I appreciate you, I think there are a couple of things that really came through in your message. One is that what we're doing is working, and that's why these numbers are low, you know, the masking, the distancing, and temperature checking, and all of those things. And to underscore that we need to continue those even more rigorously if the kids are going to be closer together. You know, we're taking a little bit of a risk in having more kids in the building. So I hope everybody recognizes that and will talk to their kids about that. So we can start having sleepovers and
Sure.
big family reunions and things like that. And then the other thing to prepare for is that if the students are within that 6 feet, given guidelines that you mentioned, we may have more kids that are going to have to quarantine, and families that may end up having to quarantine if there are cases. Whether those cases started in the school or started in the community, and then those kids, you know, bring it into the classroom.
Yeah, so you'll see at the end of this, it's all about, we're interconnected. What happens out there will impact us. What happens in here will impact the community. So we've got to keep that level of responsibility. And I don't know where I heard what I was watching the other day, but they used the term fatigue. People are getting fatigued of this, and that lack of due diligence is what is causing spread, right? So we got to maybe recommit to those things that we know got us this far.
I also think as people are moving inside now because the weather is changing, you know, the fatigue was happening over the last few months and people were getting more comfortable socializing and letting their children socialize. And so now I think everyone needs to take a look at how they behaved in March and really think through what the structure for their family is going to be, and, you know, in terms of interacting with other people inside. And, you know, we are what we do as school district affects all of our families, affects staff and families, but it also affects our community at large. So we're, you know, probably the organization that's bringing together the largest number of people on a regular basis. So if we have a responsibility to our families, I think that's our responsibility to our community to make sure that we are handling this responsibly outside of school, because that is where most of the cases and spread has been occurring.
I want to jump to the secondary recommendation. I would consider this as a step towards a full day return without going all the way in. The recommendation is that we modify the 7-12 schedule on November 9th to alleviate schedule concerns and align anticipated return with January 4th. So we would transition Chagrin Falls Virtual Academy students that are interested in returning immediately. And we would make the necessary schedule changes on November 9th. So essentially, there's been a couple of issues with the schedule. One of the biggest issues is Excel Tech. So you've got 40 students that are doing career technical training programs. And the way our current schedule with rotating afternoon periods some mornings and vice versa, they essentially miss half of their instructional time. So they're either trying to catch up in recorded Zooms, hear from other people. And it's a real challenge for those students and our staff to keep them up to speed. So I'll walk through the schedule and show it to you here in a minute. But we're recommending a change that would keep periods 1 through 4 consistently in the AM. That resolves that issue for those 40 students completely. The other thing that we've heard is with the midday transition, it's difficult for students to get home, have any kind of lunch time before they have to be back on camera and virtual. So we address that in this schedule as well. And the way I would describe this is we're going to be implementing the schedule that we would need to implement to go all in. If we go all in, dealing with lunch at the secondary level, we can greatly minimize that risk by giving open campus, as long as we give students enough time to go to their home, have their lunch, and get back here. So we're going to put that schedule in place so it's there and it's ready to go. So hopefully if numbers are great, and don't hold me to that date, I just put January 4th, but if that's the return date for second semester, then if the schedule's there, people are familiar with it, and we just bring everybody to school. This is also a natural academic break as well for our students, so it kind of fits nicely with that transition. And a lot of this decision is around the quarantining issue. If we've had cases predominantly, even not only here, but in other districts, they're middle school, high school. And quickly you were putting people in quarantine when they intrude upon that 6 feet distance. So this is a model that I know Beechwood and Solon have used with success. Solon just transitioned their high school into this. Beechwood has been in it for quite some time. I talked to Bob Hardis just about how he felt even after it went red in Cuyahoga, and they really feel good about kind of risk reward in the way it's balancing with the age groups right now. So that really is at the heart of this recommendation for now. It increases the number of students coming in. It addresses current issues with the lunch. I talked about that. The Friday instructional time, another change in this is we would keep middle school at home for virtual learning, as they're not doing that now. High school would continue on virtual learning, but we'd extend those periods. Feedback is the 35 minutes from teachers just isn't enough to get what they need to get done and leverage that time. So those periods in this schedule, and unfortunately I didn't give you a copy of that, but I will. The schedule at the high school will have 45 minutes on Fridays for virtual learners. Cons, it does not provide the full day option until January. It forces a change in schedule for our parents that they're going to have to think through, and remains challenging for staff because they're going to continue to have to balance virtual learners in the academy with live learners. Now, the numbers will be lower. There'll be less kids in that environment, but that's still a challenge that the staff has to balance. So let me just quickly show you the schedule. And I would consider this draft. There'll be tweaks along the way. So if I'm a Cuyahoga County student, before I came 5 mornings. I was here, you came 4 mornings with a virtual day. In this model, you will come mornings, Monday and Tuesday, and you will come afternoons on Wednesday and Thursday. Just flip to Geauga, it just flips that around. So Geauga students would come afternoons, Monday and Tuesday, and mornings on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And as you can see, and you probably don't know our current schedule, it keeps all the morning academic AM periods in the morning and resolves the conflict for those XL Tech students. The other thing it has done is extended the time for that lunch break to about 1 hour and 10 minutes. I think we're still playing with that number a little bit. But there will be time for not only lunch for teachers as students go and we transition the district with transportation, but they could have team meetings, things of that nature during that time, additional planning time as well. So that is the secondary recommendation. Any questions on the secondary schedule?
Can you speak to why this model over every other day, full day by county? Because I think this is introducing the complexity of families that just hit the groove and sending their kids.
Yeah, so there was two big pieces of a change. One from the high school was XL Tech and lunch. One from the middle school was seeing kids every day and keeping them connected and having too much time at lunch because middle school students aren't going open campus and wandering. So we've got to contain those students for however long that period is. Mrs. DeSenza really felt strongly about seeing middle school's kids every day and keeping them connected as kind of a non-negotiable. And when we say non-negotiable, it probably sounds a little more firm than it is, but I asked them, what are your priorities? Like everybody has to give something in this. What are your priorities? And she feels like that social emotional connection piece with the middle level child is absolutely critical. So that was able to, be retained in this model. And we may have some, there may be some secondary students that are responsible for some daycare in this transition between. We're just going to have to work with those families. If we have to flip it up, we'll do what we have to do.
Does the middle school have to be on the same schedule as the high school in terms of students attending?
Yeah. We've tried for years to get them apart, but it's a staffing and financial issue. We have too many shared staff where if the schedules don't align, they can't be where they need to be in the other schedule.
And then moving forward, is it under consideration to give even if it's not open campus, but to give the middle school students the opportunity to leave during lunch? Because that, I think helps everyone.
We haven't really spent a lot of time talking there, honestly. I mean, it's a conversation we could continue. I think Layla's just worried about that age group and where they might go. I mean, we may, if we went in that direction, we would have to restrict it a lot more. There would have to be, obviously, well, we allow our high schoolers to kind of sign themselves for the semester to this, where they're coming and going. It's kind of that, responsibility with the age piece. I'd be very concerned about releasing a 7th grader to just go, wherever they need or feel like going, for an hour and a half a day or an hour and 15
No, but minutes.
I think if we give parent, similar to when, the intermediate school does events after schools and parents, like the movie night, the Hollywood, and parents sign off on whether or not their child can leave without them present or with them present there. I feel, because I think for a lot of parents, there's a comfort level with them not engaging in the lunchtime socialization
Sure.
and actual taking off their masks and eating as well. And I can only imagine that would help us limit spread.
Yeah. So let me push that conversation a little bit. I really haven't dug into that very much. So just to overview a timeline, November 9th, we would implement the 7-12 schedule. I think that's a recommendation that doesn't really change depending on data. That's something we should do. It takes that step towards a full day return. November 17th, as of now, we bring our K-6 students back. And then January for the new year, next semester, we bring our secondary students back. And I don't want to ignore that arrow because it's probably the most important arrow. We're going to continue to monitor this data, and we're going to stay committed to the data points and allow what we see and what we experience to drive where we should be with our students. And I'll end with this quote. I know Mrs. Garvey, you watched the press conference yesterday with Mike DeWine. And he said, think about something that clearly is at stake, that is whether our kids can be at school. That is really something that is at stake, that depends upon what we are willing to do, our willingness to wear masks, our willingness to keep a distance, our willingness to avoid gatherings where there might be spread. And if we are at gatherings, wear a mask and be careful, because we do truly control spread within our community. The spread in the community really determines what is going on in our schools. I think that really captures everything that is so true. We almost need to kind of double down on our commitment. And we did, tonight we're recommending a step forward that can be very quickly detoured if we're not doing what we need to do outside of here. So I would just implore everyone that's either listening at home or, as we roll this out, as the holidays come, thinking about those differently, with Thanksgiving and college students returning. And, I know in my house, there'll be a quarantine period with my college daughter coming home. So those types of things are what are going to allow us to continue to make progress and move forward. And if we ignore those, I fear the other will be very true. We're going to divert into, taking steps backwards.
I understand, why you're recommending and making the decisions that you're doing about the timing, and really applaud. I think it's important to reiterate for everyone the amount of information that is being taken into consideration and balanced, and the resources that you're leveraging. Regular conversations with the County Board of Health. The school board is participating in regular conversations with the other boards in Northeast Ohio. All of these things are continuing to turn on and on, even in an environment where the numbers are staying relatively stable. I think, we have to remember that our staff and teachers are exposed and may be facing different vulnerabilities than our students are. So that's being taken into account as well. The teachers are looking at data with regards to student learning and trying to understand how that compares to past years and where we are with regards to pacing and mastering, and that's being taken into consideration. The letters from parents, I can tell you that I have personally taken the time, really sat down and focused on every single one, every single bullet point. I understand that parents who look at our dashboard don't, may feel very strongly that we should have already returned to full day. And then I understand the parents who feel like they're stretching to send their child to hybrid just to get the personal engagement and to try and, improve the level of education that those kids are getting, and that their fear regarding the timing of this, and that it's flu season and we're all heading indoors and then it's the holidays, and this is an incredibly challenging situation, and I think you've done a phenomenal job personally think we might be a little premature in even talking about this plan tonight. I think we'll know more in 2 weeks. You know, we're seeing the Ohio Department of Health has a map up of the spread in the last 3 weeks, and you know, it started in Michigan and it moved down and it's moving over. And we've been very fortunate in Cuyahoga County to not have, well, our area at least, a tremendous number of cases. But you know, in 2 weeks we may be saying, and the spread cases were rising throughout the country, and we're still not seeing our dashboard change. Then maybe we should be having a conversation about 7/12 going full day all in even sooner than January, or in 2 weeks we may be saying, you know, the exposure risk has gotten even greater and we need to be rethinking through all these timelines. So continuing to communicate and continuing to leverage all of these resources and balance the input that we have is the best to do right now.
I appreciate that you've given us a timeline so people can start making plans and,
Yeah.
you know, and also that there need to be contingencies in place in case something changes. But, you know, I would underscore the planning that you've done, the really clear communication. I'm sure you're going to be accessible to parents who want to understand better why. A natural question I think will be, why not bring 7/12 back right away? And you've espoused tonight some reasons why, but that we're working toward getting there, you know, as quickly as we can and working through this issue. So thank you for that. I know we don't vote on this. The superintendent makes a decision about how schools open and operate, and we appreciate everything you're doing to keep us informed and involved.
The only thing I had would be, reason why we're able to bring people back into the school is because we have not spread in the school. That's, our actions are making letting that happen. So again, just to reinforce, keep up the actions and the steps we're doing. Because if we start getting spread in the school, I guess it will be shutting down.
Absolutely.
Therefore, we have to make sure you're vigilant about following the policies and trying to do the right thing. So that's what's allowing us to come back to school.
And Bob, I just want to say thank you for all the work you put in on this. I have had people ask me.
Full day, giving them the education that
Yeah, I mean, and I think that is important for everyone to know. I mean, nobody wants our students back in more than I do and our staff does. We just want to make sure that it's done right, it's done thoughtful, and we're kind of we're given some runway to make that happen. The incremental change at the high school, although it seems incremental, it's not. It's a significant change, but it would be the schedule we need.
Can you hear me?
For the 7/12 campus through the remainder of the commitment.
That
Hey, Bob, can you hear me? Wondering when, with the changes at the 712 campus, is there going to be any changes to our Excel Tech program, the Performing Arts Academy? Will they be coming back or?
Can I unmute? No, just answer from there. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
I asked that Excel Tech stay remote through the semester. And I certainly want to stick with that for the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of space down there that as we prepare for potential return, we may need to leverage it to do some of that cooling that I talked about, space for students to go. Teacher has a large classroom, they come into an environment like this, they can spread way out. So I'm kind of protective of that space until I know we're good all the way across the board.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
you very much, Dr. Hunt. I know everybody here heard the message. I know the administration, the teachers, the students heard the message. Hope that all the parents at home hear the message to stay safe, and we are all in this together. So let's do it to get our kids back in school. The next section we'll go to is the audience community participation. I know I have one thing for you. Ms. Bruno, did you receive anything?
If yours is the levy committee one, then no.
Okay, Dr. Hunt?
I did not.
Okay, so if anybody needs to reach out to us, I just encourage you to send us an email or give a phone call to Dr. Hunt, Ms. Bruno, or myself. So this is a statement that I received from the Sustain Chagrin Committee, the Levy Committee. The Sustain Chagrin Levy Committee appreciates that you have continued to listen to our messages about the need for Chagrin Falls Schools 3.85 mil operating levy. Thank you for visiting our website, sustainchagrin2020.com, reading our literature, displaying a yard sign, endorsing our levy, writing a letter to the editor, talking about the levy with your neighbors and friends, making a donation to the levy committee, and checking out our tweets or Facebook posts. This is certainly a unique election. Over 4,000 votes in our school district have requested 4,000 voters in our school district have requested absentee ballots, and over 1,750 of you have already turned in your ballots to your county board of elections. For those of you who plan to vote in person on November 3rd and you haven't yet filled out your absentee ballot, we hope that you will reach out to us if you have any questions about your school district's operating levy. Although this levy is for new operating funds, if successfully passed, the 3.85 mil levy will not increase voted property taxes, as the district has bond millage equating to 3.85 mils that will be paid off in December and falling out property taxes. Thank you for your support. Marvel Peck, Tamara Chess, Carrie Hawk, which are the Sustain Chagrin levy chairs. All right, moving on, we have consent. So I have a motion for consent agenda items 7A through 7I.
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion?
Yeah, which one is it? G? A G. There's on the website, there's a group called the Legends, which hasn't been brought to the board yet. And I wasn't sure why it wasn't on this list or if it is a support group or not, but I was gonna ask you if you and Ashley could just take a look at the way they've written the mission statement. It seems to conflict with the board policy, i.e. about prioritizing and allocating financial resources. I don't think that's the intention. I think the intention is to be another group that brings additional funds in to help us meet our goals, but the way it's written, it sounds like it's circumventing the budgeting process.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that, work through that. I actually should have had them on here, but I'll do that work and then bring it back.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Bruno, can you please take the roll?
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Mr. Canziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
All right, moving on to the superintendent's recommendations. Can I have a motion for superintendent's recommendation 8A?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
Ms. Bruno, please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin?
All abstain?
Mr. Canziger?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose? Mrs. Garvey?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole?
Yes.
Okay, now on to item 8B and 8C. If I could have a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Great. And a second?
Second?
Sharon? And Ms. Bruno, please please take a roll.
Multiple votes.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Mr. Reagan.
Yes.
Mr. Canziger.
Yes.
Mrs. Gross.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
All right. Under the treasurer's recommendations, if I could have a motion for item 9A through 9C.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Garvey. A second?
Second.
Great. Mr. Mel, you
Right, item 9A is the monthly financial reports, and Mr. Doherty has pulled those up already. I'm going to go ahead and move to the first one. That's the summary report for the general fund. We were behind on tax collections due to timing. Now we're behind on tax collections due to the economy. So this number, this is estimated in that September column. I apologize, that is actual. These are actual numbers for September. I just did not update that. I will fix it and re-upload it so that we have it for future. So the numbers that you see there, the 11,080,000 on our general property tax is down, and we did expect a drop just due to the economy and what COVID did to our environment. But we really had no way of knowing how much of an effect it was going to have. So if you want to move Mike to the next report there, this covers more thoroughly the revenue. Still only talking about the general fund. I pulled just for this month, just the property taxes and public utility, which comes with that property tax settlement, and then the homestead rollback, and just kind of focus on those for the charts or for the graphs there. General property taxes are down, like I said. Our collections are down compared to the fall collections of last year. We're down just under 4%. It looks a little, if you just took our numbers that we posted in the general fund and compared it to the general fund revenue from last year, it looks like we're down more. That's because last year, the fall of 19, we were still collecting for tax year 18, and we had not moved that into millage yet. So now we're seeing that effect on the general fund here, in addition to the economy. So if you were to just compare the numbers and somebody just pulled the numbers, they're going to say it's not 4% actually, but our actual collections are down about 4%. Public utility is a line item that is almost always collected at 100%. So even in the environment that we're in, we wouldn't really expect that to go down. So that going up slightly is due to increased valuation on the public utility properties, and that is to be expected. The homestead rollback looks like it's down significantly. Again, that's due to timing on the collections. We've received them both now, but at the end of September, we had only received the homestead rollback for Geauga County. We had not received type bonus yet. That will be down in the same proportion as our property tax real estate collections, and it's based on that. So if I were to bring these same graphs to you next month, and I included the homestead rollback, that disparity would not be so great. Okay, moving to revenue or to expenditures. First page here, I just included the breakdown of the salaries, benefits, and purchase services. I know, we're really focusing on expenditures and, really keeping an eye on things right now. I wanted to kind of show you where and how the salaries break down. I know I always do that at the end of the year, and I kind of jump back and forth on what I bring to you on the expenditure side. I thought right now it was important to show how our salaries break down. So you can see those two orange pieces of the pie there. That's our instruction. So, the majority of our expenditures are almost 90% on salaries are spent on instruction.
What's a lighter orange section?
Special education instruction. When you're talking benefits, obviously, medical is the most expensive portion of that pie. We are doing everything we can to control that cost. We are switching to the self-insurance, which I'm hopeful a couple of years down the line, we're going to be very, very glad that we made that move. And then the other large portion there, the blue, is retirement. That's the portion that we have to contribute, and that is dictated by law. The purchase services, that orange piece there at the top, that's the maintenance and custodial contract. You will see that start to get smaller as the contract, we're not paying on that anymore. So that will start to get smaller, and then those expenditures will start to move into supplies as we're purchasing all of those things on our own now, rather than relying on Exo to do that. Moving to the next page. Breakdown on supplies. Most of our supplies are instructional. The blue portion there is textbooks and workbooks, and then the red is other instructional. So anything else that fell within an instructional function that was not a textbook falls into that red piece there. And then, you will see that maintenance and custodial portion right there, but right now it's only like 0.23% that will start to get larger as we are purchasing our own supplies now.
Actually, what's the transportation supply?
Fuel.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant.
The buses are capital equipment.
Yes. Yeah, those now though we are purchasing buses out of the PI fund, so you wouldn't see the equipment expenditures out of here anymore. But yeah, the fuel is purchased from the general fund. And then on equipment, the little tick mark that I have there on the non-instructional equipment, that $51,000, $48,956 of that is the temperature scanners, so we have the entryways. That expenditure is going to be moved into a CARES fund. We didn't have it coded that way at first. I didn't want to change the PO because I didn't want to get into a violation of not having the purchase order before the order and all that kind of stuff. So we left it in the general fund. That will get moved to federal expenditures. So you'll see next month a negative in that line. And the comparison to the prior 2 years, revenues are, if you added up those 3 bars, we look higher for September, but that is again due to the timing, mostly on the taxes. Overall, we are slightly down on our revenues. Expenditures, you can see if you added those up again, we should probably put a total on. I'll do that next month. We are down on expenditures from where we were this point last year as well. And that's due to all of the initiatives that we've implemented and all the things that we're doing to control costs. Next report is the financial summary report. So it's just very high level by fund. Negative numbers there are grant funds and that are on a reimbursement basis, and then the Rotary is the Excel Tech, and we collect tuition from the other schools. And it's not negative in cash, we still are very flush in cash, but we have some significant encumbrances in there right now, and the Excel Tech is making the unencumbered balance negative. And then the bank reconciliation report, nothing too exciting to report there. Typical month-end carrying items. Summary deposits and investments. The green piece of the pie there is what we have in Star Ohio. We're holding most of our money in there, and 0.2% doesn't look very exciting, but that is our best bet right now, other than some long-term investments, which even those are not great right now. But the following 2 pages are what we do have in our longer-term investments. Any questions on any of the financial reports?
So did I hear you right before that, so revenues, so property tax collections, you said economy is off about 4%?
Our collections, when compared to, if you take our total collections that were collected this year in the general fund and PI to what was collected last year, we're down just under 4%. Which,
that's over like that, kind of this 6-month period, and if nothing changes, you'd expect to see the latter half offset across over?
I mean, yeah, I think it hasn't hit us as hard as it has hit other school districts. Certainly, when I was in my seminar for the private forecast, and we were all kind of talking about what are you doing, what are you predicting, how are you doing it. I'm much more hopeful than some of the other districts in the state of Ohio. We've had a couple of years even where we've had over 100% collection because your delinquents are calculated in there. Our collection is still close to 99%, so I'd say we're still doing pretty good. But it's lower than what we expected to collect, and it's, when you're talking real dollars, it makes a difference in our budget.
And the counties will continue to pursue those delinquencies, so they could come in later. People maybe can't afford to pay right now, but they will be paying the tax funds. Absolutely.
And I think you mentioned before, there were some, I don't know the specifics of, but there were some funds, like federal and state funds related to COVID. Were there some of those that had to be spent before the end of the year?
Yeah, so the coronavirus relief funds, which might be, we have 2 federal funds coming in from CARES. So we have the CARES Act ESSER funds, and then we have the coronavirus relief funds, which is also through the same grant, but sort of different, it's in a different fund. That one, the coronavirus relief fund, that has to be spent by December. So that is part of the reason that we're moving the temperature scanner expenditure into that fund. It's an allowable expense. Certainly in response to coronavirus, it was not in our budget in March. It meets all of those things for them to reimburse us. So that expenditure could be moved into there. There are the other fund, the ESSER funds. There's not as strict of a timeline on that. We could have started spending those earlier, but because the other one has the deadline, we want to spend all of that one out first, and then we are starting already to hit the ESSER funds. It's just not as heavy right now.
Gotcha. And how much is left of the time sensitive?
We had it all covered.
Okay.
We're good.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Depending on which way you look.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley.
Any other
Once
questions?
again, I really appreciate you changing things up and giving us a deeper dive on salaries this time. That was really helpful. I think especially as community members are looking at our expenditures really closely to try to understand the need for the levy. So I'm sure, and you're available. I'm sure if anybody watching this were to have additional questions and want to better understand the finances
100%.
of the district.
Okay, moving on then to item 9B. These are then and now certificates. 3 of these are ours. One of them is from St. Joe's. First one is for Sodexo. This is as we terminate the service contract. They had several things that were already purchased that were not consumed that we needed to purchase from them. So this is just part of kind of closing out that whole contract. Second one, Johnson Controls, this is for storm repairs at Gurney. The auxiliary one, that's the St. John's, that is for PSI services that they're purchasing. And then the Intretto Interactive is for software renewal. Moving on to item 9C, donation that we had for this time period was Dawn Bowen donated 30 handmade facial masks. I'm recommending approval of all these items.
Sounds good. Any other questions? All right, Mr. Rizzo, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Reagan.
Yes.
Mr. Canziger.
Yes.
Mrs. Rose.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, any other business this evening?
Just to inform the board, we had our first diversity equity included in justice meeting last night. Appreciate Ashley's involvement in that, and Catherine was on as well. Really was pleased with the dialogue and the kickoff, and the level of interest is amazing. We had over 70 people show up, with a lot of people respond, so I think it's going to be I was wondering if virtual was going to work. I was worried about the engagement piece, but I don't think we've ever got 70 people. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a new avenue for us that people can jump on and do it at home and have comfortable doing it. And with breakout rooms and everything went really well. I was really happy with the facilitation by Northeast Ohio Diversity Center. So actually, Catherine, you can certainly chime in, but just wanted to update the board that that's off and running.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it's that convenient, we make it convenient for parents to be involved. They're better able to do that. And I love that we have students who are involved. Also, we're still open to anybody who is interested in the work. I was glad to see the really outlined levels of commitment. So the minimum would be one meeting a month at about an hour to an hour and a half. You can be on a subcommittee, which adds another hour and a half. And if you're a subcommittee leader, that adds another. So for most people, it would be 4 hours or less a month, even to be pretty deeply involved in the work. And it seems like a lot of the initiatives are really going to bubble up from the discussions and the activities that these groups do. I know in my mind, I have kind of a checklist. I know we're going to look at curriculum, we're going to look at policy, there's other things I know we need to do, but there may be some things that none of us would have anticipated that are going to come through this kind of organic process of engaging students and community members. So I would just encourage anybody who's watching our meeting tonight, if you're interested, please contact Mr. Hunt, Dr. Hunt. We could use more people. Many hands make light work, and I think the more breadth of input we have, the better our initiatives are going to be that are coming out of this.
Yeah, I think the more representation we have, the better the process will be, because it's not a canned program. It's going to be based on the input that we get from the people who participate, and really tailor it to Chagrin. What we do and where we take it is not the same as another district, because it's based on our community. So I thought this was really great.
Sounds great. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 18th, actually via video conference. We're going to move our board meetings to video conference. Since the discussions, we feel that we are able to communicate a lot clearer without passing over Zoom. So join us in Zoom in the middle of November. So I could have a motion to adjourn.
So then,
Catherine, a second. Thank you, Sharon. Please take the roll, Mr. Rizzo.
Mr. Rankin.
Yes.
Mr. Canziger.
Yes.
Mrs. Rose.
yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.